to my channel for data, machine learning, and tech career. In today's video, we're going to go over a recent interview I did for analytics position with 1 hour Python coding interview. And I'm not going to use the actual data set that was given to me in the interview, but hopefully I found something that's like kind of works the same way. I think all the data sets all more or less work the same way. So that I'll just demonstrate, what kind of problem I was being asked and then how did we get to a conclusion in 1 hour. Prior to my interview, I was being told that I can choose whatever tool I want to use, and then it can be either R or Python. So I decided to use Python with a Jupyter notebook. So prior to the actual interview started, I already imported all libraries I really need, like NumPy and Pandas. And I also had a DF statement ready to, read a CSV file that was given to me. So I did pd.read CSV and then the path to your CSV file, which was like save me a lot of time to be able to, get to the actual data analysis quickly. So after I made sure that I was able to read a CSV file into my Jupyter notebook, then the question was like, okay, so now you have a data set that's clean, and we have all the housing market data that was ever sold on the market. And now how do you create a low income housing segment if, let's say, you're adding this feature into Zillow or something? And so first thing I always do is to do df, which is your data frame, .info parentheses, to look at, what are the columns available and what are the data types. This really helps me to have a really quick glance of everything that's available to me so that I can kind of start thinking about, okay, what am I supposed to do here? And I guess before she even told me that the data was clean, I was, ready to dig into some, data quality issues. Maybe there's some tricky thing. But she just told me, okay, there's no data quality issue. And so here's a sample data I found online, which kind of, just to demonstrate, how the interview process went. But I would also run df.head parentheses to get first 5 rows of data just to see, what the values look like. But in general, I think that, since we're being asked about like how do you create a sub segment for low income housing, I think price is very important in this factor. And then the other thing I would really consider is number of rooms, because I think some houses might have a lot of rooms, and which is, actually drive up the price. But then, the price per room might be a little different. And so the way of how I normalize price, I might want to create a new column for price per room. And so that will kind of give us a more normalized price rather than just overall price. So to get price per room, what I simply did was, having a price divided by rooms, and it's already unique per, house list, so that we don't have duplications. And so that's what we'll do, is to create a new column called price per room and then have the price divided by a number of rooms. So like what I showed you earlier in Google Sheets, that we were going to create a price per room. And then so in Python, what you'll be doing is have df, which is your data frame that you already imported from CSV file, create a new column. So you don't really need to create a new column. You really simply just need to bracket the actual the name that doesn't exist already in the current data frame. So now we're adding a new column called price per room. And then how it's being calculated is, having the price divided by number of rooms for that row. So after I did that, I also like to run df.info again, just to check that we have that, extra column added. So before I go on to the next step, please make sure you subscribe to learn more about data. And then please let me know in a comment below of what are the interview process that you do like or you don't like. And then, share some of the experience in the interview process in the data positions. So after we have created the new metric that's normalized for price per room, now we're going to look at the distribution of that metric. And the reason why we need to do that is because we need to look at a distribution to determine, how do we know which part of the distribution should be low income housing. So to do that, we'll use a Seaborn package that we already imported earlier, which is SNS in this case. And then we'll use .displot, which is pretty much a histogram. And all you need to do is parentheses, put in your metric. And this metric is from data frame. So we'll do df dot price per room, which is our metric. And for the figure here, or for these two lines here, it's just to make the plot bigger because the default size is very small. That's really hard to read. And if your interviewer is also trying to read the tiny plot you're plotting, it's not gonna do very well. So here we have fig equals PLT. So that's the PLT package that we imported earlier, and I will get current figure. So this is gonna pointing to the figure that we created using a disk plot, and then we're gonna use, and then after we point to that figure, that we're gonna have set size inches. So this is the size of inches that I typically use 16 and 10 inches, but you can feel free to make it however bigger or however small you want. Based on earlier plot, that I kind of determined that 1.5 million is like the max. Like we're trying to, well, I guess you can only do 1 million, which will be here, but I kind of just thought that trim all, like from 3 million to 1.5 million would be good enough. So in this case, I'm doing a filter and creating a new data frame called df_rm, and I'm removing, so I'm doing a filter, pretty much like filtering anything that's below 1.5 million. So what we do here is df bracket df dot your metric or the column name on less than or equal to 1.5 million. So now we had, and if we ran the same this plot, it's gonna show us a lot prettier. So like it's more focusing on the lower end of the this distribution. So the other way you can normalize this metric is by using log. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating, or I'm replacing the column with the value of log of the column, but it's replacing itself. So I have df.price per room, which is the column name, equals np, which is numpy package, dot log parentheses of this column. It's probably not ideal to actually replace itself because they are very different values. So I would recommend you probably, create a separate column for that. But after we did that, this plot shows more like a normal distribution. But keep in mind that the values are, in the log. After we have seen, the distribution, I would typically say low income housing, we're probably more focusing on the lower bottom 25th percentile of the housing market. Like, they're not gonna be able to afford what's average, so probably focusing more on a lower 25th percentile. And so I can look at the values by doing this is to call the column of like in a data frame. So you start with df dot your column name dot describe. So describe is very nice. To have a summary, pretty much summarizing the column for you. And if you don't specifically call which column, when you just do df.describe, then it will just summarize every single column for you that exists in the data frame. And it also depend on if the column is, a measure, or if it's a categorical data, it will show different. But because this is a number or a float, so that it actually summarizes it for you with a like average, medium, minimum, maximum. So okay, we summarize all the data we have to the 25th percentile, and then thought that maybe makes the most sense. And then you might want to verify with the interviewer like how you think through your thought process, and then make sure you communicate well. But the other thing is also that because housing market, the other thing to keep in mind is the housing market is very different across different regions and different, cities. So that I also saw, there's a region name in the column, so that we probably, when we said 25th percentile, we probably mean for each region name or each housing market instead of like overall. And so what we need to do here is to create a group by to group by each region name, and then to find a 25th percentile of each region, like what's a housing, or sorry, price per room, 25th percentile of price per room for each region. So to do your group by, I will do df dot group by parentheses. So you'll put your group by, what the column you want to group by, in the parentheses with a quotation mark. So you'll do group by quotation parentheses quotation mark region name, and then you have to use brackets here to get the measure or metric that you want. So here we still have the price per room, but then we want to get the 25th percentile of price per room for each region. So you'll do dot quantile parentheses 0.25 meaning 25th percentile. And then you can do 0.5, which will be median, which is 50th percentile, and then 75 or 0.75 will be 75th percentile, so on. So here is the output of our for each region. What's the 25th percentile of the price per room?